Imagine a place where offering your wife to a guest for the night is considered the ultimate gesture of hospitality and respect, not a taboo. A territory where a freezer full of reindeer meat is literally worth more than €1,000,000 in the bank, and no one would ever agree to exchange it for money. Welcome to Chukotka, the extreme corner of Russia where America is visible on the horizon and the civilized world seems light years away from the daily reality of its inhabitants. Here you have to ask permission from the Russian secret services to enter, like a secret military base where no one can arrive without special authorization issued after background checks. Nature dictates the absolute rules and polar bears look through house windows like curious, hungry neighbors searching for food among the homes. This isn't an exotic fairy tale for glossy documentaries. It's the daily reality of thousands of people living where the world truly ends and emptiness begins. In Chukotka, billion-dollar mineral wealth and extreme poverty coexist, along with ancient traditions and modern technology. Absolute freedom and total control by the Russian state in perfect paradoxical balance. You'll discover why marital fidelity here has completely different meanings from ours. How you survive when bread costs €5 and arrives once a month. Forget everything you know about civilization, comfort and normalcy. I'm taking you to a world that follows logics as ancient as man himself and his primal needs. If you want to discover what life is really like at the extreme edge of the inhabited world, where Russia ends and the absolute frozen nothingness of the most extreme Arctic begins, hit like and subscribe. This journey will change your perspective on what it truly means to be human in a hostile and merciless environment that doesn't forgive weakness. 12. The inhabited frozen desert. When I first saw the map of Chukotka, I couldn't believe it. Bigger than Germany, larger than all of Spain, 50,000 people scattered around. The density is 0.07 inhabitants per square kilometer, meaning for every person there are 15 square kilometers of empty, absolute frozen desert. I drove for 300 kilometers in a straight line without encountering a single living being. Not even an animal, just white ice and oppressive silence that deafens. To help you understand this isolation, imagine driving from Milan to Venice through a wide expanse without seeing a house, a tree, a road sign, just snow, ice, wind blowing at 60 miles per hour, and absolute silence interrupted only by the sound of the engine struggling to keep running in the cold. This is the standard landscape for those who live here. Emptiness as normalcy, solitude as the natural condition of human existence in this remote corner of the planet. Nature is the only true protagonist and dictates its rules with no possibility of appeal. When a snowstorm arrives, everyone must stop and wait. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, doctor or fisherman, Russian or foreigner, everyone must shut themselves inside and wait for nature to decide to calm down. Here man commands nothing. He's just a tolerated guest in a territory that has belonged to ice for millions of years before human beings. 11. The border you can see but can't cross. Chukotka is bathed by two oceans, the frozen Arctic to the north and the wild Pacific to the east, separated from the United States by 53 miles of sea. I stopped at Cape Desnyov, the easternmost point of all Eurasia, and I saw American Alaska on the horizon. So close it seemed reachable by swimming. So far away as to be practically on another inaccessible planet. This geographical proximity has transformed Chukotka into one of Russia's most monitored border zones. You can't simply buy a plane ticket and fly here like you would to Sicily or Sardinia. You need a special permit issued by the Russian government. The permit is issued by the Russian Federal Security Service, the equivalent of the secret services. A document that requires weeks of waiting and thorough background checks on you. Imagine having to ask intelligence for authorization to move from Lombardy to Veneto. This is the first great paradox of Chukotka. Absolute freedom for those who live there. Total control for those who want to enter. It's a country within a country. A territory that Russia never conquered by force nor bought from abroad. But it still remains under strict state control. For obvious geopolitical reasons. Proximity to America makes this area strategically crucial for Russian national security. 10. The sky as the only road. The only artery connecting Chukotka to the rest of the civilized world is the sky. Anadyr Airport, the capital, is the only real gateway for arrivals. My plane ticket from Moscow cost 950 euros one way, more expensive than an intercontinental flight to the Maldives or the tropical Caribbean that takes you to the other side. And this to still remain within Russian national borders. But arriving in the capital is only half the challenge. How do you reach the other villages scattered throughout the territory? The answer is simple and terrifying at the same time. You can't. There are no paved roads connecting the settlements, no highways, no existing railways, not even permanent beaten paths. In summer, some cargo ships sail rivers and seas bringing essential supplies to isolated villages that would otherwise die of hunger and cold. But for the remaining 9 months of the year, your life depends exclusively on two things: on the weather that allows or blocks flights, and on off-road vehicles. These vehicles are ambulance, school bus, hearse, mail truck, and taxi all at once. They transport food, medicine, mail, people, coffins, and everything needed. It took me an entire day of extreme travel to reach a village 93 miles away, and I was lucky. No sudden snowstorm blocked me. Here distances aren't measured in miles, but in hours of travel and tanks full of diesel. Fuel is literally a matter of life and death. 9. The neighbor who's worth more than the law. It's precisely this brutal isolation from the rest of the world that has created completely unique rules of life. Here, a neighbor who lives 30 miles away is infinitely more important. Tomorrow they could be the only human being able to save your life when your off-road vehicle breaks down at negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit in the middle of nowhere. These aren't romantic talk about good neighborliness. They're matters of concrete and immediate survival that make the difference between living and dying frozen in the tundra. One resident told me that when his heating broke in the middle of polar winter and the nearest technician was almost 200 miles away, his neighbor saved him. When his wife was giving birth with complications and the hospital was unreachable due to the storm, the neighbor who had been a midwife for 30 years helped her survive. When they ran out of food in February and planes hadn't flown for 3 weeks, again the neighbor shared his supplies without asking anything in return. This total interdependence has created very strong social bonds and an unwritten code of honor respected by everyone without possible exceptions in the community. You never refuse help to someone in need. You never close the door on a traveler in difficulty. You never abandon a companion. Solidarity here isn't an abstract moral value preached on Sundays in church. It's the only life insurance that really works when everything collapses. 8. The gold beneath your feet that's worth nothing. Chukotka is a gigantic natural treasure chest. Gold, silver, tungsten, tin, mercury lie underground in staggering quantities worth billions of euros. Here you'll find Kupol, one of the largest gold deposits in the entire world, with billions of euros literally buried beneath the feet of the residents who walk over it. In Soviet times, Gulag prisoners were deported here to extract precious metals that generated hard currency for the communist state. They worked until death. Today, instead of prisoners, well-paid shift workers from other Russian regions work here. They do 3-month shifts in the mine, earning enormous salaries. The work is brutal, the conditions extreme, but the money is so good there's always a line to get hired. The extractive industry is the main economic engine. But here comes the most fascinating paradox I've seen. I asked a local resident what real wealth was, and he laughed when I showed him. Then he silently took me to his basement carved into the permafrost and opened his huge industrial freezer, filled to the brim with meat and fish. This is Chukotka's real currency. Not rubles, not dollars, not cryptocurrency, but kilograms of reindeer meat, dozens of seal carcasses hunted on the ice, and the most precious treasure of all, muktuk, the skin and blubber of the Greenland whale, considered the most prized food of all. 7. Muktuk, the treasure you eat. I tasted muktuk, and it's an experience I'll never forget. A concentrated source of vitamins, pure calories and essential nutrients to survive the polar night. It has an intense ocean flavor, a peculiar rubbery texture, and an extremely high caloric content that provides immediate energy against the extreme cold that kills in hours. Whale hunting is strictly regulated and limited to protect endangered species. Each coastal community has the right to hunt a specific number of specimens. I witnessed the distribution when a whale is caught. The entire village participates, according to ancient and precise rules. Each family receives its portion based on members. Nothing is wasted. Everything is used. The meat, the blubber, the bones, even the internal organs have a specific use passed down from generation to generation. That frozen basement full of meat is the real life insurance. It's independence from the Russian state and the cargo planes that don't arrive for weeks. It's the concrete guarantee that the family will survive the winter, even if the transportation system completely collapses for weeks or entire months due to bad weather. When a regular loaf of bread costs 5 euros and fresh apples 25 euros per kilo, you immediately understand that real luxury isn't owning the latest smartphone, but being able to take a piece of meat you hunted personally with your own hands. This is real, tangible wealth that fills your stomach and saves lives. 6. The prices that make millionaires cry. I was shocked by food prices in Chukotka. A fresh cucumber cost 3 or 4 euros. Milan and Zurich seemed like cheap cities by comparison. A kilo of tomatoes 15 euros, a liter of milk 8 euros. Fresh products arriving from outside by cargo planes have prices completely detached from reality. Every kilo of goods must be literally flown in for thousands of kilometers. Exotic fruit becomes a luxury reserved for the few privileged who can afford it without problems. Bananas at 10 euros per kilo, oranges at 12 euros, pineapples at 20 euros each. For normal families, eating a fresh salad in winter is practically impossible. It costs as much as dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in a European capital. Most residents live on long shelf life products, canned food, pasta, rice, and obviously personally hunted meat, which remains the main staple food. Even basic necessities have absurd costs that frighten anyone arriving from outside. A pack of baby diapers can cost 30 euros, a tube of toothpaste 5 euros, regular shampoo 8 euros with no possible discounts or promotions. The Russian government provides special subsidies to residents to partially compensate for these unsustainable costs. But daily life still remains extremely expensive for all the region's inhabitants. Those who work in the extractive industry earn high salaries precisely for this reason. You need huge money simply to survive here, with a minimum of dignity and comfort. 5. The group marriage that saved lives. Now we come to what official sources prefer to keep quiet about out of embarrassment. An ancient custom that the Soviet government desperately tried to eliminate through propaganda. It's the so-called group marriage, or the institution of Nevtkyumgin, the shared companion. To understand it, you must completely set aside everything you think you know. I listened to village elders tell me about this tradition. Imagine 300 years ago, a small encampment of 20 people surrounded by thousands of kilometers of frozen desert. Moving elsewhere meant almost certain death from freezing or starvation during the journey. All inhabitants were related to each other after generations of total and forced isolation. Problem number 1. The genetic closure of the group. If marriages always happen within the same tiny consanguineous community, the health of children is seriously at risk. Problem number 2, even more urgent, the immediate survival of families. If a hunter didn't return from the tundra, his family was left completely without male support. The widow and children died of hunger or cold within a few months, if no one took care of them in a concrete and permanent way. The solution was as wise as it was completely shocking to our modern mentality. Several men belonging to different families entered into a sacred pact and became ritual brothers. The pack gave each of them the explicit right to have sexual relations with the wives of the other pack brothers. It wasn't cheating, it was a survival system. 4. The pact that united families. An old hunter explained to me how it worked. According to the studies of ethnographer Merck, often men didn't even need words to communicate sexual intention. They simply followed a woman they liked, stopped her with a gesture, and if she didn't actively oppose it, everything happened there naturally. To a modern Western eye, it may seem completely savage and immoral, but in the cultures of the extreme north, physical closeness and intimacy had meanings profoundly different from ours. These cross unions brought new genetic blood to the group, avoiding the damage of inbreeding. Children born were automatically considered common children of all the Paka brothers, not illegitimate children or bastards to hide. The system created extremely strong and indissoluble social bonds. The men involved weren't just casual friends, but authentic, extended families. If one died during the hunt, the other was morally obligated to materially take care of his woman and his children, as if they were his own. The best life insurance. Not written on useless paper, but carved in the heart. When a guest pack brother entered another brother's yurt to spend the night during a journey, the host could actually give him the place next to his own wife as a supreme gesture of trust and respect toward the ancient pact that united them forever. It wasn't humiliation of the woman. It wasn't sexual exploitation. It was the concrete recognition of a bond worth more than life itself in a hostile world. 3. The extreme hospitality that disturbs the West. For us modern Westerners raised with the romantic idea of exclusive love and absolute fidelity as the foundation of marriage, this practice seems completely unacceptable and repugnant. But you must understand the context I saw with my own eyes. In Chukotka 300 years ago, there were no police, hospitals, insurance, state welfare, pensions of any kind. There was only the group and sacred pacts between families. These bonds were literally the only thing preventing the complete extinction of the community in a deadly environment. Today, this custom has almost completely disappeared under the pressure of modernization, of forced Soviet Christianization, and the influence of dominant Russian culture in the main cities. But in the most remote and isolated points of the tundra, where time seems to have stopped, there are still elderly families who jealously guard this tradition as cultural identity. They don't do it for provocation or transgression. They do it because for them it represents the code of honor that allowed their ancestors to survive when everything failed. An elder looked me in the eyes and told me, "You Westerners don't understand. This isn't sex, this is extended family. This is survival of the lineage. When your pack brother dies in the tundra, his children become your children. His wife becomes part of your family. No one is abandoned. Never ever. This is the true meaning of Nevkyumgin. Not lust, but total responsibility. Not betrayal, but sacred alliance that resists everything, even death itself of the body." 2. The food that disgusts outsiders. The culinary habits of Chukotka's native peoples are equally surprising. The first time I saw traditional soup being prepared, I was speechless at the spectacle. They don't like salt in the quantities we use. They find soft bread strange and too sour for their tastes, accustomed to completely different and intense flavors. They decidedly prefer hot steaming soups made with the partially digested contents of freshly killed reindeer stomachs, moss and lichens already softened by the animal's digestive enzymes. Considered a true gastronomic delicacy, especially during the harshest winter months. For them, this dish makes perfect logical and nutritional sense that I learned to appreciate. Reindeer spend the summer grazing on moss and lichens extremely rich in vitamins and essential nutrients that humans could never digest by eating them raw or whole. The reindeer stomach functions as a natural fermenter that transforms these tough vegetables into a semi-digested mush that's assimilable and nutritious for the human organism, which benefits from it. Eating this mush means accessing precious vitamins that would otherwise be completely inaccessible during the long dark months when the sun doesn't rise for entire weeks. Food in Chukotka is completely shaped by their harsh nature exactly as much as by its people's resilient character. There's no room for pickiness or modern food trends. You eat what the land and sea provide according to the rhythms of the seasons. Reindeer meat, seal, walrus, dried fish, whale muktuk that I learned to appreciate. 1. The true masters of the land. To truly understand the nature of Chukotka, you must look at who has shared this territory with human beings since forever, gigantic walruses and enormous polar bears. For the local Chukchi and Inuit, the walrus is literally everything. Nutritious meat for winter, blubber for oil lamps, ivory tusks for sculptures, and traditional trade. Extremely resistant skin to build traditional boats. Hunting, it is an ancient and extremely dangerous ritual. I witnessed a hunt and my heart was pounding hard in my chest. An enraged adult male weighs 1.5 tons and can easily capsize a small boat with a single blow of its long tusks, sharp as swords. There's no margin for error during the hunt. One wrong move, a harpoon that misses the vital target, and the wounded walrus attacks with devastating blind fury. It drags hunters underwater or smashes the hull. Every year hunters die during these hunts, but the community cannot give up this fundamental resource for survival. And then there's him, the polar bear, the true master of these latitudes. He doesn't fear man. It's man who must fear him. In the villages, bears look through windows. The rules are learned as children. Don't go out without a weapon. Don't leave trash. Don't walk alone at night. Never turn your back on a bear. You're not the protagonist here. Hit like, subscribe, and write in the comments if you could manage to live here even just 1 week without a supermarket or heating.